Welcome to another interview in the Legends program of the American Academy of Park and Recreation Administration. The Legends program records the highlights of the careers of individuals whose leadership, passion, and vision influenced and shaped the park and recreation profession. The program is sponsored by Landscape Structures. I'm Phil Ray, and it's my privilege to interview Dr. J. Robert Bob Rossman, who was selected by the Academy to be recognized as a legend in our field. Bob, you've been in the Parks and Recreation and Leisure Services field for over 45 years. Tell us about your background.
Sure, Phil. Well, I grew up in a small town in southern Indiana, and we only had a summer recreation program, so there weren't a lot of opportunities to work in a recreation program. So my first job was actually as a paper boy, where I learned quite a bit about running a small business because we had to buy our papers and then resell them as we delivered them. My first recreation job was as an arts and crafts instructor, and while I was doing the job the first summer I did it, I found out that lifeguards made more money than arts and crafts instructors. So over the winter, I became certified as a lifeguard so I could increase my income, and actually worked 6 years in pools as a lifeguard and a couple of years as a pool manager. When I graduated from high school, I was going to go to Indiana University, but I had to decide what I was going to major in. And my high school guidance counselor recommended recreation. And you had to check some box, so I checked recreation, and I've been in it ever since. At Indiana, I also worked as a summer camp counselor. And once I graduated, I became an NRPA intern in Oak Park, Illinois, under the direction of Bob Tolson. And from that, I did a master's degree while I was working in Oak Park, and was convinced by Al Sapor and Joe Bannon that maybe I ought to come down and do a doctorate at the University of Illinois. So I did that, and once I graduated, I've been in universities ever since. I've been at the University of Illinois, I've been at the University of North Texas, I've been at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, I've been at Illinois State University, and I've been at Texas A&M University. So that's pretty well my career. I was a faculty member for a while, but I served as a department chair for 13 years and dean for 10 years. So I spent about 23 years of my career as an academic administrator.
Well, and over those years, you became well known in a number of areas, certainly as an academic, as an academic leader, and for your work with the certification program. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, well, the Certified Park and Recreation Professional, it was originally called a Certified Leisure Professional, and the people didn't like that name. It sounded like for their career they just partied all the time. So we eventually changed that to the Certified Park and Recreation Professional. But I was involved with the initial item writing group in San Antonio, Texas, and we had to generate 125 items because that's what it took to give the test. And so we started on it at that time, and about a year later, Bill McKinney asked me if I'd serve on the continuing item writing committee. And I served on that committee for 7 years, writing items, and served as a chair for a couple of years. One of the problems with that committee was that we had to find items that were nationally applicable. People would send us items, and the answers were true for their community or their state, but there wasn't a national answer to that. So we spent a lot of time in those committee meetings readjusting the questions so they really had a national orientation. The other thing I did was Bill McKinney and I did write the Certified Park and Recreation Professional Certification Exam Study Book. And that turned out to be a larger project than either of us thought. But interestingly, nationwide, the year after that book was introduced, the scores went up. So I think it helped the profession quite a bit, particularly just understanding how questions might be formulated and how things might be asked. I think helped scores go up, and people did better and felt more comfortable when they came in to sit the exam. So that took actually quite a long time of my life, and I wrote the 3 editions of that study guide over a 10-year period. So that was quite a project.
But over time, you really developed a lot of knowledge and expertise in the area of innovative recreation programming. How did that evolve?
Sure. Well, Programming is something that I really have done my whole life. I mean, even when I was in high school, we used to organize dances and organize events. I didn't realize then, I didn't know as much about it then as I know now, but I did understand that there were some things you had to get done right, or it wouldn't all come out very well. In my first job in Oak Park, I was a community center director, and we were responsible for program development. And then after I was promoted to assistant director, I also had to do programs, because in Oak Park we were strictly a recreation operation. There was a park district that did most of the park stuff. So we really were a recreation operation. And I organized and operated an awful lot of special events, community-wide special events, and so on. So when I started doing my doctoral work, I took some courses from Jack Kelly and Norman Denson, who were both sociologists, and started understanding that indeed there was a sociological background to programs and participating within groups that try to produce leisure. So my interest developed really from some of my early experiences, some of my job responsibilities, and then some insight after I started taking graduate work about there could be a theory and a social science background to all of this if someone could put all that together.
Well, and one of the outcomes of all of that work is a very significant book in our field. I want to make sure I get this right: Recreation Programming Design and Staging Leisure Experiences.
That's right. That's right. And that book's now in its 7th edition. It's been out there for over 25 years now. And it's really one of the primary books used for teaching programming in university curricula. The book really has changed over time, and I know some people think that we just put out new books every once in a while so we can sell more of them, but actually there are significant changes in each of them, and in fact, getting ready for this, I went back and looked at the original volume, and it doesn't look anything like today's volume, and it doesn't have the same content to it. So programming really is one of the major things we do, and I figured out early on that if it was an area where I could have an impact in the field, it's one of the most basic, fundamental things that park and recreation people do.
What would you say is most unique about your approach as outlined in your book compared to others?
Well, I intended to try to combine and develop what I called a theory-based practice. That is, that the practice would be grounded in what we knew about the social science of participating in leisure. And, you know, there were a couple of fundamental questions that I had to answer that really are the kind of the basis of the book. They seem simplistic now, but answering these two questions has been kind of a career. One was, what is a leisure experience? You know, the social science research that's gone on over the last 25 years and the philosophical work that's done has helped define that pretty well about what a leisure experience is. And then the other question is well, what is a program? And you know, the definition we put in the book is that a program is a designed opportunity for a leisure experience to occur. And a lot of programming books back before I wrote mine were just a compilation of activity leadership techniques and advice to be sure and have a facility scheduled and have all the equipment and things that were pretty obvious. So what we tried to do was to capture the interaction of how is a leisure experience created in the face-to-face interaction of an event and of occasion and of an experience. And it's the theoretical foundation that you can build out of. You still have to do you know, a lot of work, but it gives you some place to go back about, well, what is it I'm trying to do here? Well, I'm trying to create a leisure experience. One interesting anecdote about the book: when you get ready to write a book, you have to write a chapter and then outline all the other chapters and then give it to your publisher and say, well, here's how it's different, and here's where the market is. And so this is sent out to two blind reviewers. They're blind meaning I didn't know who they were. And the reviews came back and said that they would not publish this book. It just really did not teach programming. And it didn't teach programming the way it was taught then. So my publisher, Joe Bannon, Well, he hum-hawed around a little bit, and finally I said, well, Joe, I need to know, should I write the book or shouldn't I? He said, write it. I'm going to publish it. So he really showed quite a bit of courage and published the book, and it was immediately well received and has really become a major text. You know, over the 25 years, we've sold in excess of 25,000 of those books. And publishers usually figure that each book that is sold is read eventually by 3 to 3.5 people. On average, obviously, there isn't a half person, but so that means about 85,000 people have read the book, you know, and that's quite an impact.
Well, what are some of the unique techniques programmers need to do a good job?
Sure. Well, one is a fundamental understanding of what the leisure experience actually is. And you know, from the social science research and from the philosophical work that's been done in the field, we know that when people identify an experience as a leisure occasion or an occasion of leisure, we know that they have had the perception of freedom, that they didn't have to be there, that has been intrinsically satisfying and engrossing, and that they've had created what we call positive affect. That is, they have had a role in determining the outcome of the event. And today we call that co-production. That is, that the participants co-produce the event. And early on, you know, we thought from some of our leadership training that we produced the event, that we went out there and produced the event for the people. Today we understand that that's not true, that the participants themselves, unless they have a role in helping produce outcome, then you've not operationalized the leisure experience for them. And they could have had, you can have an educational experience or a religious experience. You can have a lot of different experiences. But for people to call it a leisure experience, they have to have had those three perceptions. That is freedom, intrinsic satisfaction, and that they helped control or produce outcome.
So what is the role of the recreation programmer in managing those experiences?
Sure. Well, you know, we developed a notion that we called the situated activity system, and these are kind of 6 things that people have to manage within the context of an interactional environment. And so the programmer really tries to deal with those six elements that we call them.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Jack Kelly.
Yes.
Who are others that influenced you in your career, particularly in developing your expertise in recreation programming?
Yes. Well, I would have to give Jack Kelly and Norman Denzin. Norman Denzin is not well known in this field, but he is an internationally recognized expert in an area of sociology called symbolic interaction. And Jack Kelly was my lead professor at Illinois, and he encouraged me to go take some classes from Dr. Denzin because he knew that was my interest. And Jack was also familiar with these, but Dr. Denzin taught all the symbolic interaction classes at the University of Illinois. And it's a theory of sociology that basically suggests that things are created through face-to-face interaction. Well, that's what we do in leisure programming, is we get people together in a face-to-face situation. So symbolic interactionists think that all of life is played out in occasions of face-to-face interaction. And so that was an important theory, and it certainly was exactly what we do. And so Jack Kelly and and Norman Denzin were 2 important people. Joe Bannon was very important as well, and he's really been an important mentor of mine for over 40 years. I would also have to mention my co-author, Dr. Barbara Schlatter. She's been very helpful in helping the book move along. She has a great deal of recreation programming experience, and she's also just a masterful teacher. So some of her teaching exercises and things have been incorporated into the teaching guide that comes with the book.
Well, with over 45 years of experience and most of that in higher education, what advice do you have for students today or for young professionals?
Well, I think I have some advice. I think that, first of all, this is a fun profession to be in, and I don't mean like ha-ha fun. I mean like it's just very gratifying. We aren't, I look at other people and we aren't exposed to any hazardous chemicals. We don't have to meet people in any occasions except those where they've come to have fun and a good time. So we have a lot of pleasant time. And I think another thing I would say is that to be in this field, you need to be a people person. And, you know, if you don't like to talk to people, go be an accountant or be a computer geek. But if you're going to be in this field, you've got to talk to people, you've got to enjoy them. And the third thing I would say is that you need to be an advocate. I prepared a lecture for the George Butler series a few years ago, and I looked at, you know, how are people different then from now? And the early leaders had a fire and brimstone intensity of telling people about leisure and how important it was. So I would say people be proud of the field and let others know about its importance.
Well, this concludes our interview with Dr. Bob Rossman, a legend focused on improving recreation programming theory and practice. And you may obtain more information from the Academy website on Dr. Rossman or Google his name. And thank you and have a good day.